It's lovely to have you on board.
Currently, we have some demonstrations on the streets. Markets are on the highest level. In fact, I'm not big fan of gold.
Belarus, maybe, for high yield bonds, as well as the US. Welcome to the 12th episode of Exante's Surfing the Curve series. Today I'd like to introduce you to a new expert, Alexander Shkut. He's head of Exante's Minsk office, and he's got many years' experience as an investment banker researching funds. Alexander and I discussed the riots in Belarus and how that might be affecting markets globally. We also talked about the elections in the US in November and how that might affect markets going forward. I spoke to him this morning. Good morning, Alexander. Thank you ever so much for joining the Exante expert analyst team. It's lovely to have you on board.
Good morning, Simona. Thank you very much for reaching me out. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. It's great to have someone new on board. And you are the head of our new Minsk office. So let's talk about Belarus. What is going on there and how is that affecting markets?
I can share some information about the situation in Belarus. Currently, we have some demonstrations on the streets, and our government put some violence on these demonstrants. That's why we are under pressure of some sanctions from the US and European Union. Standard & Poor's Global, which is a rating agency, said that they can down our sovereign credit rating. That's why our sovereign bonds, Euro bonds, increase in the yield to maturity up to 2% since the last week. So I think that our Euro bonds do not have any high risk of default, but still they have quite high yield, which is 8%. So some international investors who are looking for high yield bonds can pay attention to our bonds.
That sounds really interesting because obviously I'm not sure how many investors would actually be looking at Belarus in particular for high yield bonds, but it sounds like it could be a really great area to be considering. We've spoken about Belarus and how the events there are impacting on the country and obviously the global markets. But what about events such as the elections in America? What kind of impact do you think those will have on markets? And should we be looking at American high yield bonds as well, or are markets a bit more unsteady over there?
Okay. So, in fact, the investors who use passive strategies and just bought market indexes in the last 10 years, and especially this year, are experiencing quite good yields. But we understand that the markets are on the highest levels. So it's not really possible to grow all the time. That's why we should employ some strategies which can work during the market crash, or at least during the times when the market in a flat. So that's why I think investing in some high yields, or at least on some corporate bonds from the US, is a good strategy for now. But I think investors should choose some shorter durations. Why so? Because as the markets are on the maximum levels, it's good kind of strategy to invest in bonds with short duration. Why so? Because we can anticipate some corrections on the market within maybe a year, maybe after the presidential elections in the US. So in that case, investors who are looking to cheaper stock prices, it's reasonable for them to invest in short in bonds with short duration, and after that looking for lower prices on the stock market.
And do you think, though, that this will be there will be a different impact depending on who wins the election in the US, or do you think this will happen regardless?
There are a lot of uncertainties in that case, but I think, of course, Wall Street and financial markets give more preferences to Donald Trump. So, if the Biden will win, I think I think that we will see the correction on the market in that case.
Excellent. And we've obviously spoken about how uncertain markets are at the moment and how difficult it is for investors to be even predicting what's going to happen next, because this is an unprecedented time. We've never experienced anything like this globally. How can investors diversify their portfolio in order to get the benefits, but also the protection of their portfolio in case there are even more uncertain times ahead?
Okay, yes, we have now an interesting and difficult situation because Trump want to win the elections, and that's why he tried to support financial markets. That's why we do not anticipate any shortfalls on the market. But we also see that the market's on maximum levels, and that's why we do not anticipate market growth. So I suggest some strategy for flat markets. One of the strategic asset allocation and some strategies which we can use, it's a covered call strategy. It works quite good during the flat market. It's just when the investor have some underlying, some stock, and sell writing call options. So even during the flat market, in that case, investor can generate some positive returns, and also it's secure when we will have some corrections. So I think it's a good strategy for all kind of investors at the moment.
That's excellent. I've never even heard of that strategy. So obviously I'm not a professional investor, but thank you ever so much for mentioning it. And that's something that I guess all investors should be looking at. What are there any other strategies you'd recommend?
Yes, of course. The other strategy is adding another asset classes to the portfolio. If we add some other asset classes to the portfolio, we decrease risk. Why so? Because we diversify our portfolio and the investor is paying less risk per amount of per unit of return. So I suggest to add hedge funds. This strategy wasn't so good in recent 10 years because of bull market. But hedge funds can generate positive returns during the bearish market as well. So that's why when we do not anticipate really high growth of the stocks, it's a good idea to add this kind of instrument. Of course, last year, for example, board market indices such as S&P 500 overperform most of the hedge funds. But for example, during the 2007-2008 market crash, hedge funds overperform any passive strategies. The same situation was in March of this year when we have market crash. So I think it's a good strategy.
So hedge funds appear to do well when markets are not doing so well. Is that what you're saying? That they actually seem to be performing whenever we've experienced these crashes? Actually, the hedge funds seem to improve.
Yes, absolutely. Hedge funds, some types of hedge funds use market natural strategy. That's mean that during any conditions on the market, any sentiment, they generate profit. Why so? Because they used to short positions and simultaneously long positions. So it's about market neutral hedge funds, and they are working quite good in such uncertain situation on the market, like today.
As you said, I guess that they're giving you diversification in your portfolio, and it's almost like an active management, isn't it? Because they are doing the diversification for you. If as an investor, you might not want to do that yourself or pay somebody to do it for you.
Yes, absolutely. According to most scientific research in the field of financial markets, during the long period of time, passive strategies are better. But during the uncertainty on the markets, of course, it's better to use active strategies and active asset allocation. So currently, it's better to use strategic asset allocation and active management.
That's I agree. I mean, like I said, I'm not a professional investor, but from what I see in markets, I think you do need to be very active at the moment with everything moving so quickly. And finally, Alexander, is there anything that you would say to investors? Any messages, any key messages that you're seeing in anything you're seeing in markets, or that you'd like to share with us today?
I think that just employing the mentioned strategies can increase the Sharpe coefficient of the portfolio and will bring safer investments to any investor. So all investors who do not employ these strategies should consider to include in the portfolio. And I think that's it.
We've talked about portfolio diversification, and one we haven't mentioned is the classic safe haven asset that everyone always talks about, and that is gold. Can you give me your opinion? What's going on with gold? It tends to be overpriced, underpriced. It's broken the barriers. What's happening?
Yes, of course. Due to actions of Federal Reserve and quite big liquidity on the market, we see the new maximus on gold. So should the investors consider adding this commodity to their portfolio? I'm not big fan of gold. Why so? Because it's just a speculative asset, and this asset really do not generate any cash flow. So for the investors who like gold, I really can recommend some investments to the gold mining companies. From my point of view, it's much better because these companies at least can generate some cash flow and not just a speculative asset.
To sum everything up, Alexander, you're saying that investors should be looking at things like the covered call option strategy. They should be diversifying their portfolio and actually looking at Belarus maybe for high yield bonds, as well as the US, because the US market seems to be performing well at the moment. And if everything changes and Joe Biden gets into power in the White House, then maybe we will see a correction in the markets, as you've said.
Yes, absolutely. Investors should be prepared, and it's a good idea to anticipate some worse scenario on the markets because we currently under a lot of uncertainties.
Indeed, uncertainty seems to definitely be the most important word here, because nobody knows what's going to happen. But thank you ever so much anyway for your opinions. It's really useful to speak to you and find out about what's going on. And I really hope that the situation in Belarus resolves and that you have a bit more calm over there. But it's lovely to talk to you, and congratulations on the opening of the Minsk office. So very exciting for Exante. And I hope to speak to you again soon, maybe in a couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
You too, Alexander. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you ever so much for tuning into this week's episode. We're sending lots of love to Belarus, and we hope that the riots calm down there. In the meantime, we'll all be watching in anticipation to see what happens in November in the United States. Will Donald Trump make it a second term in the office? Who knows? Tune in next time to find out more.